fixed, but Matthew chapter 15. What a great service. It's been great worshiping God together, and tremendous time of communion, our offering, worship, amen. Matthew chapter 15, we're going to continue our series on crucial conversations and look at the Canaanite woman. In verse 21, it says, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. He answered, I will send only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. You know, this woman is an amazing example of perseverance. Of perseverance. She never quit. I mean, not one time through the story, she would not quit pressing Jesus or his disciples for help. She was ignored, rejected, potentially insulted, and she kept coming. She persevered in her conversation with Jesus, didn't she? And if you're going to talk with Jesus, you're going to need to persevere. You're going to need to persevere. You know, it was great to see the ring dunk on Friday night. All right. And we had, six students did that. Who did the ring dunk this week? There you go. And, you know, it was great. You know, they didn't drink a pitcher of beer as the tradition here, because they would be drunk and they're Christians. They don't do that. Amen? So they drank friendly pitchers of stuff, right? And, you know, they drank sweet tea, Propel. I think somebody may have had horchata, or that was Zeke. Zeke had horchata that time. You know, it was awesome. You see Ray, the great Chugger Chavez, man. He just threw it down. Like, how fast did he do it in? 32 seconds he drank a pitcher of, what was it again? Apple cider. Woo! And he didn't lose it. It was awesome. It was funny persevering through that tradition, just drinking it, and we've got to persevere and never quit, amen? That's a weird illustration, but you know, it brought us together. And you know, just like they never quit, we should never quit, because having a relationship with Jesus requires perseverance. Yeah. It requires perseverance. If you've ever really gone after walking with God, you're going to need to persevere. You're going to have the spirit, I will not quit. And that's what this woman had. She would not quit. It says here that Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Having technical difficulties here. There's the map. The region of Tyre and Sidon. And as you can see in the map there, well, the color doesn't really come out. It's better on my computer. But the green area is where the Jewish territory would be, and up in Tyre and Sidon, where it's lighter color, that is actually outside of the Jewish territory. And this is the only time in Scripture that Jesus leaves the Jewish territory. And they're coastal cities, they're on the Mediterranean Sea, and that's modern-day Lebanon, you know. So we got to hear a story from Beirut today, so we're actually looking at a story in the Bible from that area. It's about 30 miles away, give or take. And this passage, it's really interesting because this foreshadows what the gospel is going to do. This is the only time Jesus ever left the Jewish territory. And now, with the good news, he was going out. And that's what he would do as the gospel would spread to all nations. You know, I believe Jesus withdrew to prepare for the cross. And as he was waiting there in Sidon, there by the beach, a woman came up to him and talked to him. And you look at Jesus' response, the first thing, there in verse 23, it says, Jesus did not answer a word. Jesus didn't say a word. His response was silent, seemingly ignoring her request. And one of the most challenging things we have when we talk with Jesus is that we don't always get an answer. And that can be challenging. We have to persevere as a Christian. You have to persevere through silence. Prayer involves a level of silence. Prayer is patiently waiting while urgently pleading with God. And the truth is, we don't like to wait for things, do we? We're in the world of instant, immediate. You know, we want instant response. You know, how do you respond when you text someone and you don't receive an immediate response? How do you feel? You know, so you text the girl or the guy you like and you're interested in, and you get no response. Oh, watch out. You know, how do you feel? Or you text your best friend and they don't respond to you. Or you text your spouse and they don't respond to you. How do you feel? How do you feel? You know, do you get irritated when you're ignored, or do you get insecure when you're ignored? You know, sometimes we send the text back, "Are you receiving this text?" and then you're irritated at first, and the delay goes longer, 30 seconds, 30 more seconds, and then you send back, "Are you not talking to me?" You know, I mean, you feel insecure. That was my relationship with Diana. If we had text messages, I would have sent that all the time. You know, I was a wet blanket, man. It was bad. You know, but the truth is, we start to feel insecure when we get delayed. When we pray something to God, and we go out and we cry and we get silence. And the longer you wait, you can become irritated with God. What's up with this, God? You said to pray for anything. I'm praying for this, and it falls in the category of anything. Why aren't you answering me? Or you can get insecure. Oh, yeah, God, I guess I'm not that important to you. I'm too sinful anyways. You wouldn't, yeah, I understand, you wouldn't answer my prayers. And we have all these different responses, just the simple God's response of silence. When we get the silent treatment from God. You know, Jesus didn't have to answer a word. She had to wait in silence, and we'll have to wait on God. How well do you wait? How well do you wait? You know, you got to put yourself in her shoes. As we look at these conversations, imagine being in her shoes and pausing. We know the rest of the story. We know her daughter gets healed. But in that moment right there, how would you feel? Can you imagine standing beside the presence of Jesus and crying out to him for your daughter who's suffering terribly, and he says nothing? Man, you would be like, wait, what? Can you see me? You know, and this whole story, it just makes me think about waiting on God. And as you can't never quit waiting on God. There's certain things that'll come up in life. I remember at different times we've waited on God. When we wanted to get pregnant, for instance, you know, it took longer than we wanted. And we got off birth control and we wanted to get pregnant, and it took 11 months before we saw the little sign. And there were times where Diana just cried and I'd cry, and we'd hold each other and just cry. Now I know other people have experienced a lot harder things. We're really blessed with our pregnancies and everything, and people have experienced all kinds of things when it comes to that. And if you've never had a child or ever been pregnant, you don't know what I'm talking about. But when you get there one day, a miscarriage, these things are intense. Because as you wait, the questions start to come to mind. Is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with them? Can we ever have a baby? And you start to wonder these things. And you're waiting. And you're waiting. You know, and even the last baby we had a time window. We were going to move at a certain date, and we had to be pregnant by this date, or we were going to do something else, right? And so we talked and we prayed, and she wasn't very happy about that. And I was like, I'm not moving with the 1-month-old. She's got to be a little older. So we moved with a 4-month-old. It was awesome, but, you know, big difference. But I remember just different, and at that time we had to wait, we had to pray, we had to plead with God, and waiting on God. And I'm sure out here in this audience, the audience on this side, there are greater things, more significant things, and you may have to wait on other things. But we're all going to have to wait on God. So what do you do? Seriously, what do you do when you wait? What do you do when you pray something that's really important and you plead with God? How do you wait on God? And this Canaanite woman, she's a great example of how to have a conversation with Jesus, you patiently wait while urgently asking. That's how you pray. You patiently wait and urgently ask God. You know, I appreciate she didn't go anywhere. She kept crying out. She didn't move away. In fact, as the story goes on, she grew closer to Jesus as she cried out. Is this how you wait on God? Is this how you wait on God? Do you draw closer to him? Or is there a distance created because you didn't get what you wanted right away? You know, this woman, she could have, a little history, archaeology tells us that there was an idol near Sidon, 2 miles away, the temple of Eshmun, and it was the Phoenician god of healing. And so I wonder if it popped through her mind like, well, this guy's not answering. I've got to get answers. Maybe I'll go there. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. And often, isn't that what we do when we wait on God? We get tired of waiting on his promises and we go somewhere else. You know, have you pulled away from God as you wait in silence? Or do you draw closer? Some here today have prayed for romance with a godly man or a godly woman and are still waiting. You know, are you tempted to go somewhere else? Are you tempted to wander somewhere else and feel like, hey, God's not answering my prayers, and I've been a bridesmaid this many times. I mean, come on, God. How many dresses do I have to buy before I get my white dress? Come on. And we can feel all these things. And I don't mean to make light of anyone's struggles. But we have to wait on God. We have to wait on God. You know, are you going to really go after an alternative, or are you going to wait for what God has to say, what God has to give you? Because it's dangerous when you go after an alternative. Read the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, and Ishmael, and that whole trauma that created. Why? Because they stopped waiting on the promise of God and went to an alternative. And when we wait in silence, we've got to wait and not draw closer to God and not away, because truthfully, Satan will provide alternatives. And you start to think that God's not the only option, that there are other options. You know, others here today have had financial trouble and have prayed, God, help me with my finances. And Satan, you know what he does? He provides a solution. Satan does, so that you don't have to go to church anymore. That in fact, you'll get this better paying job and this better opportunity, but really kingdom second, your job first. Or, you know, well, I'm just going to hang on. I'm going to put my wallet, I'm going to leave my wallet at home and checkbook at home. I'm not going to give to God. And well, that's the solution to the financial trouble. Well, why don't you obey the scriptures when it comes to tithing? Well, I need help financially. Well, maybe you're in this situation because you don't give. And we've got to look at what the scriptures say. As you wait on God, do you draw closer to him? You know, all of us have waited for God, and we all will wait for God at different times for various things. The biggest temptation when we get no response, I found, is just to pull away. And I appreciate this woman's perseverance. I appreciate that through Jesus' silence, she didn't pull away. She didn't go anywhere else. She didn't go over to that temple and worship a false god. She drew closer to God. And in fact, she got closer and she cried out, and she even told others, hey, go to Jesus for me. This is how you respond to silence from God. Get others to pray for you. Yes, I think they were a little annoyed. That's why they went, but they went. You know, what will you do when you have to wait on God? Will you keep crying out, and will you draw closer? You know, what I found as I study this over and thinking about this, the reality is we get something great when we wait on God. We get closer to God. And you may never get answers to some of the prayers that you're asking. You may never know why this happened or didn't happen or that happened, and that's horrible tragedies and different things. But if you wait on God for understanding and you keep coming to him, the end result is you're closer, just like this woman. Yeah. She got closer to Jesus and she didn't pull away. And so as you wait in silence on things, all the myriad of things we may pray about, just keep drawing closer to God. Yeah. Amen? Don't let silence push us away. We got to persevere through silence. Never quit when God is silent. Another truth that we got to persevere through is hard truth. Hard truth. You know, as we carry on this conversation, the disciples had enough of her crying out, and they asked Jesus to send her away. They didn't have compassion. They didn't say, hey, Jesus, let's help this woman out. They said, send her away. And he responds, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. And at that point, she gets closer to him, and she begs him, Lord, help me. And then Jesus says, it's not right to throw the children's bread to the dogs. These are hard words to swallow, aren't they? I mean, if you were in this conversation, what would you think at this point? Would you be hurt? Would you be confused? Would you be disappointed, disillusioned? Would you be insulted? And as I read this story, it doesn't fit the picture in my mind of Jesus. This doesn't picture my sheep-toting baby kissing Jesus that the world has developed, right? That he would say, it's not right for me to give the children's bread to the dogs. I mean, I'm like, what? Like, my mind is blown. You know, you don't know what to do with that. Who is this Jesus here? You know, did Jesus really say that he was not sent to help out in this desperate situation? Did he really say that? I was sent only for the lost sheep of Israel. Did Jesus insult this poor woman? I mean, these are questions that I asked the text as I studied this. I don't know if they come out to you. But Jesus says some hard truth. And the truth is, the reality is, when you get close to Jesus and you have a conversation, you're going to face some hard truth. And she never quit, even though she faced hard truth. You know, a few years ago, I went and had a physical, and I found out that I'm pre-diabetic. You know, I was like probably 32 or so at the time. You know, I was like, man, that'd be bad. Diabetes in the 30s, that's not good. That's a bad road to get on. I got to get off, you know. Another time, around the same time, I went over to the dentist and found out I had 18 cavities. 18 cavities. So these truths, man, made me do something radical. I had to do something radical. I started drinking Diet Dr. Pepper. Amen. Hard truth. And I went to the gym, and I've been working on my diet. You know, I still got a long way to go. But it's a hard truth. And sometimes you got to face hard truths in life. You won't get better without hard truth. Unless you see where you're deficient, you won't ever study harder in that subject. And she faced some hard truths that day, didn't she? You know, both these truths, as she sat there and she listened, did Jesus say these things? You know, it's hard to hear these words from Jesus. It strikes my ears to hear Jesus say, it's not right to throw the children's bread to the dogs. Makes me ask, was Jesus being a racist? You know, a common phrase in that time was Gentile dogs. Later, they would use that same phrase and say Christian dogs in a derision, in a way to put people down. Was he calling her one of the dogs that he talked about in Matthew chapter 7 when he said, don't throw your pearls to pigs? Don't throw it away. The exact word here, and so I had to study this out and look at it. I'll share with you a little bit I learned here. The exact word here in the Greek is kuneria, which means small dog or pet dog. And this is completely different from the term kuon, used to refer to unspiritual people or to an unclean animal, okay? That's the other word used for dog. And we have to understand the metaphor Jesus is using. At that time, his duty was to the people of Israel, not to the Gentiles. And taking his attention from Israel is violation to his mission. It'd be like a father taking the children's bread and throwing it to the dogs before they ate. You know, Mark's account says, let them eat all they want before you give it to the dogs. Now, can you imagine this illustration? Your kids sit down for dinner and they have a plate before them, and you grab it and you say, you give it to old Fido over here. Here, Coco, eat this. And the kids are left hungry. I mean, that would be bad. And that's what he was saying here. He wasn't insulting her. He wasn't trying to be rude. He definitely wasn't racist. You know, but it's still hard to hear, isn't it? It's hard to listen. You know, and so what are some lessons that we can learn from this? You know, Jesus is saying to her that you're unworthy of my help. You're outside of the scope of my mission. She was not an Israelite. In fact, she was a Canaanite. And the reality is, when we talk to Jesus and we hear the truth, it's going to get uncomfortable that none of us are worthy to be near Jesus. None of us are. In a conversation with Jesus, you're going to hear things you don't want to hear. She was begging for help for her daughter who was suffering, and she had to hear the hard truth. You know, he revealed that she wasn't an Israelite and it would not be right to give it to her instead of God's people. Again, can you imagine being in her shoes? Here's the one person who can help me. And she hears the first statement. And then the second statement is stronger. Silence. First statement, rejection. Second statement, almost an insult. Like, whoa. It would be hard to hear. You know, it'd be very hard to hear. You know, and sometimes we forget that Jesus doesn't owe us anything. That Jesus doesn't owe us anything. That we're not entitled to certain conveniences or different things. You know, we live in a very entitled world. We expect free education. We expect free health care. And many expect that Jesus will do whatever we want, whenever we want it. And when that doesn't happen, I don't know about Jesus. And this woman got rejected, almost insulted, and she stayed there. She looked at the hard truth, and she stayed there. I appreciate this woman's humility before Jesus. She didn't argue with him. She wasn't hurt. In fact, she hears what he's saying, and she agrees with him. She says, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord, it is. And she agrees that she was unworthy to sit at the master's table with God's children, but she asked for a crumb. What humility, amen? What perseverance, but also a humble spirit. She acknowledged that she was undeserving of what Jesus' help. And she just begged for a crumb. Let me ask you, would you just take a crumb from Jesus' table? Or do you think that you deserve that you should have a seat at the table? How do you approach Jesus? You know, our entitled spirit, we want to get our way. You know, and it's a scene when we don't get something we want. Like James shared, he thought he should be off that ticket. He said, I'm an American, I'm going to fight my rights. And he went and exercised that freedom, and they told him, no, you're guilty. You know, swung the gavel. Do they have a gavel, James? I don't know. You know? But we think that sometimes when we talk with Jesus, we make him lesser, and that we, in fact, have the upper hand. We start to act like we have the upper hand. I'll give you this if you give me that. Well, hey, I'm not going to give you everything because you didn't give me this. And we start to negotiate with Jesus, don't we? And we want it our way. We want the red carpet treatment at church. Oh, everybody better be nice to me. And if they look bad at me, I'm out of there, man. Oh, you know, that church, it better be good. That service better be good, all right? People use the phrase church shop. Why? To find something that meets their needs. And yes, I think you should use discretion in the church you go to. But it's not about us. It's about worshiping God and serving others. When did the church become about us? And we have this entitled spirit as we come to God. And some of us, I believe, we would have argued with Jesus. No, you owe me. You're the Son of God. It said, that prophecy said you would help me, right? Or he may have gotten smart and used some Old Testament, and it'll impact the whole world. You're supposed to bless the whole world, not just Israel. Right? And he could argue with Jesus, but she didn't. You know, some here approach with God with humility like this woman. Others do not. Others do not. We approach God like God owes us something. You know, we can't forget the same truth is true to us also. I think most of us are not Israelites. But also, it doesn't matter. We're in the new covenant. But no one is deserving of Jesus' mercy. No one deserves something from Jesus. Jesus doesn't owe you anything. In fact, he took what we deserve upon him.
Right.
You know, sometimes we can think, well, I'll pray to you more, God, this week if you give me a raise at work. I'll spend more time reading my Bible if you take care of this problem or that problem. And we start to treat God and our relationship with God like a hostage negotiation. I'll give up this if you give up that. And we somehow think that we have a hand in this conversation. And the woman didn't treat Jesus this way. She acknowledged that she was owed nothing. She was undeserving, and she just begged for a crumb. Just a crumb from the master's table. Are you willing to just take a crumb from Jesus? Or do you have to get special treatment? Will you beg Jesus for a crumb, or you hold it out until, wait, Jesus, put it in a nice bag. Put it in a nice bag with some of the decorations on it, right? No, just a crumb. She just begged him for it. We have to remember the hard truth that we don't deserve anything, amen? You know, we are not entitled to a seat at the table of the banquet. We're not entitled to that. So my question is, what will you do with this hard truth? Will you go home angry? You know, as you get closer to Jesus and you have friends and they open the scriptures with you, they're going to tell you some hard truth. They're going to tell you things that you don't want to hear. They're going to tell you things that you don't like and you don't appreciate. That's rude. That's hard. But you need it. You need it. I've been rebuked so many times in so many different ways. Men, women, it was awesome. I've been challenged and corrected because I'm a Peter. I just put my foot out there. Oh, here's another one. Hey, you know. And I've been corrected so many times, but I am the man I am today because of hard truth. And as you approach Jesus, will you quit because you were told something hard? Will you walk away angry, mad, irritated? Or you go through with it and listen and learn the lesson that Jesus is trying to tell you? What do you do with hard truth? You know, I love her because Jesus was like, I'll just take a crumb. I'll take a crumb. Yeah, it is. It is. I'm a dog. It's okay. I'll take a crumb. Dogs get the crumbs on the floor. I'll lick them up. Let's go. Just give me a crumb. A crumb from you is all I need. And at that, Jesus said, you have great faith. You have great faith. We'll close out with this. You know, Jesus responds, woman, you have great faith. She believed that just a crumb from the master's table would take care of everything. Do you have faith like this? Do you believe that Jesus, just a crumb from his table, just a little bit of Jesus, solves everything? You know, I read this story and I thought, you know, why did Jesus prolong her suffering and her anxiety? I mean, like, why did that go on? Why did he ignore her? Mark's account adds in Mark 7:24 that he entered a house and did not want anyone to know about it. You know, like I said, he was down by the coast in the Mediterranean Sea. Maybe, you know, he didn't want to be bothered. He was going to be off the grid and focus on going to the cross. And maybe Jesus was on vacation. I don't know. Or is it something deeper? You know, why didn't he respond the same way he did to the centurion? We read about it a few weeks ago. The centurion tells him, my servant is lying paralyzed and suffering. Jesus responded immediately, I will go and heal him. Why does Jesus do different things? Why is his answer not always the same? Did he love the centurion more? Was he more concerned about the centurion's servant than he was this woman's daughter? And sometimes we can struggle. And we compare, don't we? We pray for things, other people pray for things they got. Why did they get it? Why did that guy, he's married? Oh, man. How did he get such an amazing wife? What did Steve do? Amen, you know? How did that happen? And we can compare. And we forget that Jesus does different things. We got to remember it's important that God does things on his timetable, not on ours. I think we always have to remember that. But I believe that he let her continue in her anxiety and her suffering, and he's letting us continue in our anxiety, our questions, our unknowns, our sufferings as we question things about God, because it builds our faith and it shows us our faith. You know, her faith is visible in it. And maybe he was doing it for the disciples, maybe he was doing it for her, or maybe he just did that for us so that we could see what it looks like to be faithful. Her cries were met with silence, and she kept crying out. She never quit. And as she drew closer to Jesus, as she cried out, she drew closer to Jesus. The disciples, their answer is, send her away. And Jesus says, yeah, you're not in my ministry. You go somewhere else. But she drew closer. She landed at his knees. You You know, at this, the woman draws closer. Again, he rejects her. Stronger this time. It's not right to throw the children's bread to the dogs. What does she do? She gets closer. She would stay near and beg Jesus for the crumbs from the master's table. She knew that she wasn't worthy. She knew that Jesus didn't owe her nothing, but she never quit. Yeah. And the reason that Jesus, this story is in here, and why didn't he answer it first, is because this is what it looks like to be faithful. Yeah. This is what it looks like. So as you go through things and you're praying things and you get the silent treatment and you don't know the answer and you keep praying, get closer to God, because this is what it looks like to be faithful. And as you go through things and you get closer to Jesus and you hear hard truth, keep going. Keep going. Never quit. Her faith is persistent, undaunted, unrelenting. 4 different times she's rejected, but she keeps coming. She would not leave Jesus alone. Ignored, rejected, insulted, she kept coming. At every rejection, she drew closer to Jesus. What will you do? She did not give up, and it says, you have great faith. Your request is granted. Your request is granted. Because of why? She had great faith. You know, I hope that we can be a people with great faith, that never quit, that persevere through silence, that persevere through the questions, through the unknown, that persevere through the hard truth in following Jesus. Yep. And that one day, I pray that everyone here, that Jesus said, you have great faith. Amen. Amen.